We're here with Masha Merkulova, who's the CZO, the Chief Zionist Officer of Club Z, which is an incredible organization working with Jewish students in the United States. Masha, you're here on a very quick trip to Israel. Thank you for coming into JNS. Real privilege that you're here with us in the studios in Jerusalem.
Alex, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited, and it's one of my bucket lists. So
amazing. So, I asked you before the show if you were the CEO, if you were the president, and you said, no, you're the Chief Zionist Officer. So what is a Chief Zionist Officer?
I think every organization should have their own Zionist officer. I just happen to be the main one in my organization. It is a person who is a proud, active Jew who is not afraid to speak up and do, not just talk, but also do Zionist things.
So Club Z, and the Z obviously is like the same Z as in the CZO.
Correct.
Club Z is an organization that works with students. Tell me how many students, what students. Not everybody knows what Club Z is.
So Club Z came to be after I realized that while we have attempted for the past 15 years to help our college students to sort of like stand up for themselves as Jews on college campuses, it's a little bit unfair because we're sending them to a place that we know might be problematic. It's no longer might be, it is problematic, and we haven't given them any preparation. The most logical thing for me is why don't we prepare them before they go to battle? So it's a club. It's where kids come in 8th and 9th grade, and there's a lot of nice Jewish boys and girls who get to know each other, but we get together for a purpose, and the purpose is to learn about Israel, Jewish history, Israel history, to learn about the conflict, and to know and understand how to communicate our Jewish positions to the world outside of ourselves.
Two of the things that I see that you do, and I've been to some of your events, and I've spoken to groups when they've been in Israel, and I came to your national conference, spoke to students about media bias and other things. But the two things that I think that you teach, number one is Israel education, so they understand, what is this country, and not only what is it, but what are the reasons why any student that is Jewish should be proud of the state of Israel, and B, why they should be proud of their Judaism. So you're teaching like Jewish pride and also Israeli pride.
So, it's fine to teach Hasbara.
Hasbara means explaining the conflict or
correct, or to
advocacy,
to give adults maybe some talking points. But we're talking about adolescents that are forming their identities, and I want them to see themselves as participants, as makers of Jewish history. I want them to understand that they matter. Listen, there are more Instagram followers for each of the Hadid's sisters, right? Other models. They're famous models in the United States. Each of them have 40 million followers. There are 16 million Jews. We're never gonna win really on a large scale on social media, but what we can win is with our own children. If we raise them to be proud, they also need to know what they're proud about, not just slap on a IDF sweatshirt and say, yay. What are you proud of? What has this place meant, not just for you, but for your grandparents? And where do you come from? So one of our foundational things is the fact that we are the indigenous people to this land. And when kids realize that, all of a sudden that is like, oh, wow, I have deep roots in this place. So, yeah.
So how do you identify the students, in order to bring them into the club?
So we're actually, this is going to be Club Z 2.0 this upcoming year. And what we're doing now is anybody can join in 8th and 9th grade for a year. And we will then watch them. We'll see who is going to rise to the top. And after this first year, they're going to be invited to join our leadership program, our envoy track. And that's going to be by invitation only. But everybody can get in the basic education for the first year. And even with that, just 1 year in Club C has produced amazing results of then kids going to college campuses and speaking up. Even kids who I've never would have expected, but they are there. They're right now on campuses, and they're standing up for themselves.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about that, because you did identify the campus is just ripe with anti-Israel sentiments, and even in some cases outright soft and violent forms of anti-Semitism. But if the kids go through this training, which is just a general training, but then also a leadership training, that what are the students then able to do on the college campus?
So if you've never been to an anti-Israel space, I'm not talking about a rally on a street. I'm talking about a speaker event, or right now, very common ceasefire resolutions at a city level. I encourage everybody to go. And if you've never gone and this is your first time, you're going to come out, you're going to be extremely upset, and you're going to feel isolated, and you're going to be scared, because it's a jarring experience. Our kids go into these spaces, and not only are they able to stay calm, they're able to speak, they're able to push back, they're able to give a speech that is 60 seconds or 90 seconds and actually get their points across.
Yeah, very important. I was recruiting students for programs in Israel already 20 years ago as a recruiter for the Jewish Agency long-term programs, and I was going to the student conferences by Hillel and the Israel on Campus Coalition, and you already were having students coming forward and reporting, showing pictures and videos of what's taking place on the campus. You had Israel Apartheid weeks with Israel Apartheid walls being built on the campus, Gaza die-ins and other things like that taking place. And really the American Jewish communal leadership, their message to the students and those coming forward and asking for help was, don't confront this head on. Okay, it's a fringe group of students and leaders, and don't give it more attention than it's worth. Don't confront it. Don't magnify it. And what you need to do is to win the battle for Israel on the side with other positive programming, cultural programming, show people not in the middle of the Israel Apartheid week that Israel is a good place, and that with time the truth will win out. But we see now the folly in that strategy, that things that began 20 years ago and maybe 25 years ago have only metastasized and grown worse, to the point where the campuses are almost unsafe for Jewish students, certainly unsafe for them to express their values on campus, unsafe to write about Israel in a paper unless they're slamming Israel without risk of failing. And you have university presidents that are saying that this activity is not necessarily anti-Semitic, or at least that it needs to be taken in the greater context of something that they can't define. Maybe you could talk about the American Jewish communal leadership, whether or not they failed the American Jewish community and certainly the students, and what you think about that.
Okay. There's a lot to unpack here. I don't think anybody can argue that American Jewish leadership has failed young Jews, at least the young Jews, right? I don't know about other segments of population. And a few things. Here's the thing. Hummus, not Hamas. Great. Yes, do that. And when there is Israel Apartheid Week, you still have to be there. You have to do both. We have to do the positive, the cherry tomatoes, as I call it. But the conversation on campus is not about innovation nation of Israel. The conversation on campus is you have stole our land and planted your cherry tomatoes. You're a thief. And for us to keep ignoring it, for Jews to ignore something, it's actually quite interesting. I didn't think about this till I was listening to you, but it's like, do you ignore a mole? Do you ignore any kind, anything that you're going to ignore is going to fester and they're going to grow into a bigger problem. And so now there are campuses that are unsafe for Jewish students. There are high schools that are unsafe for Jewish students. And the reason, I think one of the big reasons why it has been so perpetual is because in high school, the parents are like, listen, he's there for 4 years, just, get in, get out, go. And the same thing with colleges. We're there to get an education. We're not professional protesters. We're not professional, And so unfortunately, the colleges, I have my own experience when my son was at the university. And by his sophomore year, the school already knew me. And I told him, I said, listen, I have no idea what classes my son is taking. I have no idea what his grades are. I don't know anything. But anything that has to do with Jewish life, Israel, and Jew hatred, I will know about it, and I will create campaigns, and you will have to deal with it. And so when administration gets, 200, 300 phone calls in a day asking them the same question, they get upset and they start paying attention. And I can tell you they all exhaled when my son graduated because they're like, oh, okay, she's going to leave us now. But that's the problem, right? Because we are not able organizationally to sustain the pressure because it's hard. Because you're responding to a conflict, and it's just hard because you just want to be positive all the time. Who doesn't want to be positive? I want to be positive, but somebody needs to be constantly putting pressure on people who are in charge.
Does that start with the Jewish communal leadership who are professionals, and stay in longer than a student in campus, or does that really start with the parents or the students?
Again, at this point, we're in a state of emergency. So what I would recommend is for parents to have a very open communication line with your kid when it comes to Jewish stuff, and get to know the Hillel director, get to know the Jewish Life director, get to know the dean of students, right? Like, build those relationships, introduce yourself, and say, I'm Masha Merkulova. My son is a freshman. I will be keeping an eye on this. The universities don't want negative publicity. And so one of the barriers that we have now overcome in a lot of ways because of October 7th is people are willing to put stuff on social media. Before that, they were too afraid. At this point, the entire Jewish community in America have realized, I don't know anybody who hasn't lost friends, who hasn't had conflicts at work. People finally understood. They got a glimpse of what it's like to be a college student, either in high school or in college. I work with high school students. And what is interesting is that at 14, 15, 16 years old, they have now gone through the process of losing friends and realizing, well, they're not my friends. Like, if they can't stand with me when my brothers and sisters are getting massacred, I don't want these friends. And adults are finally catching up. I'll give you one little tidbit. You asked me about the school administrators. What happened in Berkeley on February 26th was a pogrom.
What happened?
So Club Z has brought Ran Bar Yoshafat for a national tour. And our students who are there, who are Berkeley students, they brought him to campus. They organized a campus event. And 24 hours before...
Who's Ran?
Ran Bar Yoshafat is a longtime friend of Club Z. He's a lecturer. He's a public diplomacy expert. He's an attorney. And he's a deputy director at Kohelet Policy Forum.
And also a reservist.
And a reservist, yes. Right. And so he came to United States to talk about what he saw in Gaza because he was there from the beginning. So the students have asked and have stated that they're going to host this event and the speaker. And 24 hours before the event, students for Hamas, they're called Berkeley for Palestine, but let's face it, they have announced that they are going to shut it down, the event. The students went to the campus police, to the administration, and they said, please make sure that the event is protected, that we have enough police and the police is properly prepared. And there was about 300 mob of people. Most of them, from what I understand, were actually students, but there were definitely adult agitators, and they have not allowed students to come into the building. The building, even though they moved it 3 times, the police did not secure the building. How do you the police did not have riot gear on. They had no tools for crowd control. And so a student got choked. Another student's thumb got sprayed or broken. Commercial buildings' glass was broken. A door was broken. I'm sorry, this is such a failure of the school to secure their own event.
But, even before the security, there's a more fundamental issue, which is that you don't have freedom of speech on the college campus, right? It's not a safe space to express your views or opinions.
Well, you have a freedom of speech to express the Jew-hating opinions because, for example, the Slather Gate at Berkeley has been shut down for months, and students are not able to walk in and out to their own school. How is this allowed to happen? Because there is such an avoidance of confrontation in the American sort of psyche of the elites that they don't want to confront. And I don't remember his name. His first name is Dan Mogilov, I think. He's a spokesperson for a university, and he said, "Well, what do you mean? We can't remove students from an event if they're causing trouble because we'll have to arrest them. And do we arrest 10? Do we arrest 20? I don't care. You can arrest 100 of them if they're breaking the school rules, if they're breaking the laws. Yes, you arrest. That's how you send a message to hooligans and bullies and jihadists that, no, we will not tolerate this." And Ron actually did come back to the university, and private security was hired. And it was private security who removed one of the people who was causing trouble during the event. But event was not advertised. It was not announced where it was happening. Again, the university has forced the students into the corner to hide. That is unacceptable. And I know that there's going to be lawsuits. I know that it's coming, but it's going to take years. And I think we need to be doing things now. We need to be holding people accountable outside of the Jewish community, but also the Jewish leadership itself. I became a professional Jew not because I wanted to, but because I felt I had no other choice. I felt like if I don't do this, I don't know who else would do it and would they do it right.
This came out of you being a parent.
Correct. This when my son, when he was in 8th grade, he would just start telling me things. And he was going to Jewish day school, and it's a great Jewish day school. But what was happening around him and what was happening in public schools and how people were reacting, and nobody was addressing it. In California, we have ethnic studies curriculum, and it's now a required course for students to take.
In public schools.
In public schools. But it's also going to be a graduation requirement. So even private schools will end up having to do this. And it's a masked critical race course. They just call it ethnic studies because it sounds nicer, and because by the time they rolled it out, critical theory was kind of debunked, if you will, for the,
People don't want to see critical race theory in the schools, so they kind of renamed it as
into ethnical studies. Yes, ethnic studies curriculum, and it is. It's there are 4 oppressed official groups: Hispanics, Blacks, Native Americans, and Asians. Who are Asians? Are Asians Chinese? No. Koreans? No. Indians? No. Arabs. Arabs are Asians. Jews? No. We are the white privileged colonialist class. So how did this happen? Where was the Jewish caucus? Where were organizations who have budgets, who have been our voice to the powers that be? They were asleep at the wheel.
Right. Furthermore, most of the American Jewish community is liberal. They're voting for Democrats. Not just on the national level, also in state levels. And they have a lot of influence. And yet within the party structures that they're supporting, this has happened, and they could have been inside and protecting their community, and it hasn't happened. And now students, especially on the campuses, are basically forced to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to these university campuses where many students can't necessarily even walk into a Hillel house
They
or
literally
to a
get
Chabad.
abused, right? The parents are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for their children to get abused and harassed. How is this normal? Here's the thing. I think that, yes, 80% of American Jews still are going to vote Democrat because we're human beings and we're in denial. And you don't want to believe that your party doesn't think that, has an official stand that Jerusalem is not, capital of Israel.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to stress also, nobody's telling people how to vote. Okay, that's not the point of this conversation. The point of the conversation is if you see things happening in your area that you can change, it's a responsibility to defend your people and to change that.
Right. Well, I do have good news, so we're not going to be doom and gloom the entire time. So I'll give you an example of a Bay Area Jewish community. The grassroots have organized at an incredible level. Right now, Bay Area's cities have been trying to vote on ceasefire resolutions, I don't know, I think since December. And it is 100% grassroots. People have organized themselves on WhatsApp groups by cities, and they help each other, and they come to each other's cities to give powers and numbers and to understand what messages work, what doesn't work, what we should do, what we should not do. And it has been extremely successful, but it also has opened a lot of people's eyes. Literally today, somebody posted, my approach to life has always been just keep your head down, don't talk about politics, don't get involved. And I realized that it was a mistake. I am going to speak because now it's in my city. Now it's my school board that is voting on it. We had a hospital board try to pass ceasefire. It's insanity.
Yeah, I think that's important. It's not just national politics. Things are becoming very, very local, and it's not just state politics. It's also cities, and it's not just cities. Like you said, it's also boards of education. It's hospitals. And there are Jewish donors and Jewish students in all these areas, and parents and individuals that are connected to these organizations or that could easily get connected to these organizations, and you have to fight on every level.
We have to fight. There's no... When, again...
Wait, so what happened? What's the good news here?
The good news is that the resolutions are not getting passed as much as they would have been if nobody showed up. The good news is that people are willing to, it becomes a second job because the ceasefire hearings, they're 5, 6, 7 hours long. You come home and at 5 o'clock, you need to be at the city hall, and you're not going to get to speak for 60 seconds if you ever will get to speak till maybe 9 p.m. or 10 or 11 or 12 p.m. at night. It's become a second job for many of the people. And so what we do, what Club Z does, is that we now not only did we train our students to speak, we also had to help parents to speak, to learn how to speak, to write speech, to be there. It's very much like I felt like I'm writing for politics. Okay, somebody said that, okay, this is what you should be saying. Pivot your message here. Don't say this, say that. Because it's important. It's all get live streamed. Everybody can go and see it. And I think looking back, I don't want to be the one who didn't do anything. And I don't want my students to be the ones who are well, yeah, I was busy. I had a basketball practice. Your basketball practice is going to have to wait. You have to go and speak. And there's the priorities talk that nobody's talking about. And I think one of the reasons where we are right now in the United States as a Jewish community is because we have not prioritized Jewish education. We had not prioritized raising kids who know how to fight back, right? The only way to deal with a bully is to hit them harder than they hit you. I'm sorry. I know it sounds really bad, but it's true. That you can't talk to a bully nicely. And No, we don't teach physical violence, but we say that if something happens, you need to go bring attention to it.
Have you got any pushback from other elements of the Jewish communal leadership and that structure?
Traditionally, yes, not since October 7th. So that's the good news, is that they know that nobody, listen, if they push back, I didn't listen before, they don't push back anymore. And if they try, they know that they're just losing credibility at this point.
So how many students have come through Club Z to date?
Oh, that's a good question. Hundreds of students have come through, and God willing, we'll have about 400 students starting this year, the school year, and we're just we're really poised in position to grow.
And there are certain places where there's more infrastructure. Like where can people find Club Z?
So we're in the Bay Area, Los Angeles, Brooklyn, Westchester, Livingston, New Jersey, and unexpectedly we're in North Carolina. We're in Raleigh and Charlotte.
Amazing. Okay, so how can people learn more? And I'm assuming that if you have the resources and people are interested, that Club Z is willing to grow into other areas as well.
We get invitations to start Club Z every day. It's not you need to have somebody on the ground. You need to have people who are willing to put in the work. It is possible. That's how we are in North Carolina, because we have a group of parents there who are super passionate and active, and they want to bring this to their children. And yeah, at this point, we can run a course that is X number of sessions. You can also come to Club Z conference. You don't have to be in Club Z to attend it. That's like 3 days of Zionism on steroids. Yeah.
And how can people learn more?
Clubz.org, or on Instagram, it's at Zionism for Teens.
Zionism for Teens. Okay. Masha Merkulova, Chief Zionist Officer of Club Z. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.